Okay, so the Schott Foundation's report, and I want to preface this by saying John Jackson is a good friend of mine, and I respect their work tremendously. That report has been grossly misinterpreted and misused. It is a report that looks at graduation rates, which they measure by looking at a cohort of ninth graders, and seeing how many in that cohort are graduating 4 years later. It does not measure dropout, and even the report differentiates between graduation rate and dropout. I recently was forwarded a manuscript of a book, and the publisher and the author of that book wanted me to write an endorsement of it. And when I read through, they said 50% of black boys are dropping out according to the Schott Foundation's report. I told them they needed to correct that. And I was perfectly willing to write the endorsement if they corrected that. And they gave me kind of a funny answer. Then I sent them the report, and I told them, you know, this is a PDF file. Just do a fine for dropout in the report so you can see how they represent it, because you're misrepresenting the report as you're saying it. And I never heard back from them. And I've written an article to this regard. The complications with the way that they present it is that when you look at cohort comparisons, there are certain kids that get missed. The kids who graduate late get missed. The kids who get their GEDs get missed. But the largest percent of kids that get missed are kids who transfer out of district. So the way that black people are moving around right now, one, because of gentrification, and two, because we are being scared away from so many districts like the ones I just told you about, it's hard to use graduation rate as a good measure of what we're doing, of where we are. I mean, it's like you're scaring these black mothers who are trying to find the best opportunity for their kid, and you're telling them that, you know, this district is, you know, just horrible, so you need to go somewhere else, and, you know, they might be using other people's address, or they may be just uprooting and moving their families, and their kids are being called dropouts by us. So when I see the gaps that they are showing, it's just based on how I know that they have calculated. And again, I've written all of this. I've been on record with this. It's hard for me to use that as anything that tells me anything about what's really going on. What's really going on is us being pushed around and us having to negotiate our needs with the desires of the state. And, you know, just to kind of get into the question that you asked about, you know, the charter schools and, you know, choice and all these types of things, one thing I say to that, and I think it's related, we have to separate our interests from the interests of the state. So from the state's perspective, what costs the least amount of money and have the best perceived reward is what they want to do. So if they can spend less money on a charter, and that charter is giving evidence that it's doing better than the public school, then that's where they're going to put their resources. But they're not going to create a measure, they're not going to show you a measure that's fair if they have really invested in this working. So that's when they're going to give the charter schools one type of criteria of success and the public schools something else, because that's where they really want to go. So we have to be very cautious about that kind of stuff. There are some good charter schools, and there are some charter schools that offer some things that public schools don't. And I mean, I have friends on both sides of this issue. I have friends that are staunch public school advocates. I have friends who are about choice. And the criticism that I have to the public school advocates is that, one, they use poverty as an excuse too much. They are constantly talking about the kids that they are getting as if they're giving more explanations for why their test scores are low. And I don't see them just challenging the merits of the test, which they should be doing. They're devaluing the GPA when the GPA still shows, it still gives a better picture of who's going to be successful than any test score. I don't care where the GPA is. I don't care if it's at a under-resourced school or an affluent school. GPAs is a better measure of college success than any test. That's been demonstrated. But yet, the public school advocates aren't fighting to preserve the integrity of the GPA. They're letting people come in with these external measures, and they're suffering for it. They are also, in my opinion, not believing in their kids enough because they aren't putting they're not fighting for honors classes in any school. They're not fighting for Algebra 2, calculus, and physics in every school. These are things that I believe we should have that I don't see them really fighting for. So if they're not fighting for these things and you have a charter school that offers it, and this charter school may be kicking out kids that aren't performing in physics. They may have deplorable completion rates, but yet they have 100% college entrance rates. So you have that going on. I can't dispute that that exists. But if you are a parent and your district does not offer the requirements that it takes to get into a school like NYU or Binghamton or Howard University, then what choice do you have but to go to a charter school? So both sides, I think, need some checking. And a lot of people on the choice side, they're being co-opted by some interests that I don't think have their best interests in heart, our best interests in heart. And they need to be honest about that. And, there are certain things that I think that they can provide, but when they have outside interests coming in and they're misdirecting them into another area, I think that's when they're at their worst. So, yeah.